is, could you describe a recent situation, or in this case, maybe a situation when you had your company, either one that works for me, and that is where you felt your leadership team could have benefited from additional training and guidance in, say, culture building or leadership?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have, the company I worked for before I went back off on my own. They ended up getting sold um, at a fire sale price because of the lack of leadership. It's interesting, and this is an interesting story, and there's a little lesson here too. Is that the guy who was running the company at the time, his dad started the company back in the 50s. Brilliant engineer, well respected in the industry, and was his name was well known, and people still know his name, years after his death, and all that is because he was a giant in the industry. His son, went out and got an MBA, and supposedly, and thought he was this brilliant leader like his dad, and he wanted to emulate his dad. He was horrible. Had no clue. I don't know where he got it, whether he got his MBA from the back of a magazine, or he mailed off for a diploma or whatever, but really no lack of leadership, and wanted to dictate how things were done, and falling back on tradition and that type of thing, but not a very good leader, not a very inspiring leader. And as a result, people kind of mocked him behind his back, and not that that doesn't go on, almost anywhere, but in this case, it was pretty extreme, and so he did not have the vision, I guess, and certainly not the self-awareness to be a good leader. And I think self-awareness is an important component of being a good leader, is, understanding how you relate to people and doing honest self-assessment on that. You got to step back and kind of look, and it's very difficult to do, but you got to step back and look at how, you're impacting other people, and not have a fragile ego that you can't deal with the answers. And that's part of it. So we really, we do these kind of like leadership retreat types of things once a year and stuff. And it was mainly him talking to us. There was no real training or anything like that. He could have really benefited from somebody coming in and saying, Andy, you really need to kind of, get your act together, and here's where you're deficient, and you need to work on these things, and do that type of thing. But his ego would not allow it. And that's a real thing, is people become leaders of organizations. They think they are supposed to know all the answers, which is just not true, but they think they are, and they think it's a sign of weakness if you don't know the answer. Therefore, they're just making crap up,
Yeah.
and just gotta, pardon me for putting it that way, but it really is, they're just, and it's kind of like, I'm saying it, so that's the way it is, instead of really understanding, or saying, hey, I don't know, but let's figure this out. That is, to me, that's a sign of being a good leader, and not just thinking you have to know all the answers all the time. Nobody can. Nobody can. And everybody recognizes that, and we all make
Right.
mistakes, and owning up to your mistakes and saying, look, this didn't work. Let's, we gave it a shot. It didn't work. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Didn't work. Let's cut our losses, and go to plan B, or change things up, or scrap that, and move on, and being willing to admit that. A lot of leaders are not. They'll stay with things, and they'll throw money into bad projects, because to do otherwise would admit that they failed, and that's a huge blow to their ego. So I would say, and I kind of got off the topic here a little bit on leadership training, but really it's a matter of, you got your hardcore leadership training, and then you kind of have the uh, what is the emotional intelligence type of thing where it's your ego getting in the way of doing that, and it stops people from getting the training that they might actually need and benefit from. Say, I don't have all the answers, let me turn to somebody else here that might be a specialist, and I'll get some insights to be a better leader. And and I'm not, I think there are natural leaders out there, but um, but even a natural leader can benefit from insights from other people that I mean, we're kind of, if I can put it this way, we're the sum of our experiences, and
Mhm.
somebody else might have a completely different set of experiences that we can benefit from because we have not gone through those particular sets of challenges and learned from those and drawn the conclusions from those, and so that's where we can get benefit from looking at some of these other things.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I just recently finished, as you know, I love to listen to books, and I just finished listening to Ed Catmull's update on Creativity Inc., and it very much goes into that. And I don't think you actually wandered off the path. I just think you went to the core of the path. Excuse me for a second. My last interviewee talked about exactly that. The first thing she said on the first question is it's about the human factor. And it's so true. What you were talking about is a leader who was delusional about his leadership ability and wasn't open to finding that out, because after all, I'm the boss, you don't tell me what to do. Whereas you look at truly exceptional leaders, look at Ray Dalio, look at Ed Catmull, look at Reed Hastings from Netflix. All of these leaders, it's like, in the case of Ray Dalio, you can actually be fired for not bringing up an objection that's based on not just opinion, but some valid knowledge or experience, right? So for example, if they're talking about some investment they're going to make and you're in the back of the room, regardless of who you are, you might just be someone's cousin visiting, but they would actually like to hear from you because, it's like, well, excuse me, I might just be here visiting my cousin, but I'm a hydrogeologist, and what you just said is completely false. And if you use that to make the decision, you're making a bad decision. Great leaders are willing to say stuff like, and great experts. This is one of my differentiations for detecting experts, because there's so many people who are full of crap on the internet selling themselves as experts. You won't hear a faker usually say, I don't know, I think that, let me get back to you, because they're faking it and they know it, even if we don't. Even if they're a good actor, and most of them aren't, right? Their credibility is so fragile that they can't say, well, you know what? Turns out that I don't know everything, and I knew that. And anybody with deeper knowledge of anything knows that they don't know everything. And if somebody says such and such neuroscience, what do you think, Tim? It was like, I think that, or I have no idea, is something I'm much more likely to say. If I have a working hypothesis, I'll say that. I'll say, well, I think this is probably true or not true, but I'm not certain. I've never seen specific research on it. You will never see that from an insecure leader, a fake leader, or a fake expert, but the reverse is true. Like you said, maybe EQ is the main thing that's missing from leadership training, because I think maybe, well, it is that, and the other part you said, which is about what's called group genius or wisdom of the crowds. There's a guy named Sir Francis Galton found this out like 100 years ago. He was an elitist. And to his own disappointment, as a very good researcher and ethical about his research, he thought, all these dumb, uneducated people, we have to lead them because we're the elites and they're too dumb to know better. But maybe you've heard about this, where they guessed the dressed weight of an ox, and the mean average of the whole crowd's, it was within 1 pound. And it isn't as simple as just canceling out mistakes and stupidity. It just turns out mathematically that it's true that a collective crowd is more intelligent than an individual the vast majority of the time, and it's inversely proportional to the size of the crowd. But even 5 or 10 people, after that, it becomes like a diminishing return. 10,000 people is barely smarter than 20 or 50 or 100. So you're being a terrible leader if you're not willing to tap into the collective knowledge and experience of your reports, of your employees. So the next question